The sprinklers kicked on at exactly 6:15 a.m., just like every Tuesday for the past 8 years. But this Tuesday, as I watched the perfect arcs of water paint our perfect lawn through our perfect kitchen window, I discovered my husband Richard was having an affair. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It wasn't dramatic, no lipstick on collars or mysterious phone calls, just a calendar alert that popped up on my phone. Site visit Brooks, 6:30 p.m. Shared family calendar. Richard had forgotten to hide it. I'm Melissa Vaughn, 39, corporate lawyer, and apparently the last person in Maple Court to know my marriage was a lie. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 15 years reading contracts, finding loopholes, protecting clients from deception. Yet here I sat in my granite-countered kitchen, staring at evidence of the oldest betrayal in the book. Lena Brooks. I knew that name. PR director at Richard's company, the woman Aunt Beverly always praised as such a brand genius during our monthly brunches. The woman who'd sent Christmas cards to our house for 3 years running. I screenshotted the alert. Then I scrolled back through weeks of site visits and client meetings that aligned perfectly with Richard's late nights and early morning showers. The pattern was embarrassingly obvious once you looked for it. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, Claire Jensen was already power-walking the cul-de-sac in her matching athletic wear, probably composing today's neighborhood newsletter in her head. The HOA chat would be buzzing by noon with updates on whose garbage cans weren't properly aligned and which lawns needed edging. Perfect suburban theater, everyone playing their parts. I opened my laptop and pulled up Richard's company directory. Lena Brooks smiled back at me from her professional headshot. Blonde, polished, the kind of woman who probably called other women hun while stealing their husbands. My phone buzzed. Richard. Working late again, don't wait up. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I typed back, Of course, honey. I'll leave dinner in the fridge. The thing about being a lawyer is you learn to think 3 moves ahead. While Richard was planning his evening with Lena, I was already planning something else entirely. I spent the day at my office downtown, handling a merger that would net my firm $2 million in fees. Normal Tuesday stuff. But between depositions, I found myself researching private investigators, then closing the browser. Too messy. Too expensive. Too amateur. I had everything I needed already. That evening, I drove to the office complex where Richard claimed to be working late. His BMW sat in the parking lot, but the building was dark except for security lighting. I parked across the street and waited. At 7:30, Richard emerged with Lena Brooks. Even from a distance, their body language told the story. His hand on her lower back, her laugh too loud for a business conversation. They got into separate cars and drove toward downtown. I followed at a distance, keeping 2 cars between us. They met at Meridian, the trendy hotel with the rooftop bar that Richard had taken me to for our anniversary 2 years ago. How romantic. I didn't go inside. Didn't need to. I had enough. The drive home took 20 minutes. 20 minutes to decide what came next. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Richard came home at 11:45, reeking of expensive perfume and craft cocktails. I was reading in bed, wearing the silk pajamas he'd bought me for Christmas. "How was work?" I asked without looking up from my book. "Exhausting. The Morrison account is hurting me." "Poor baby." I turned a page. "There's leftover salmon in the fridge if you're hungry." He kissed the top of my head, guilt kiss, and headed for the shower. While the water ran, I opened his laptop. Password was still our anniversary date. Some habits die hard. His email was a treasure trove. Months of messages with Lena, increasingly intimate. Hotel reservations, restaurant bookings, a jewelry receipt from last week for earrings I'd never seen. I forwarded everything to my personal email, then deleted the sent items, lawyer habits. When Richard came out of the bathroom, I was back to reading. "Melissa," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "we need to talk." My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice level. "About what?" "About us. About this." He gestured vaguely at the space between us. "Things haven't been good for a while." I closed my book and looked at him. Really looked. When had his face gotten so soft? When had those lines around his eyes deepened into something that looked more like weakness than wisdom? "What are you saying, Richard?" "I'm saying maybe we should consider a trial separation, just to figure things out." The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted me to make it easy for him, to pack my bags and disappear so he could play house with Lena without the messy complications of divorce proceedings. "I see." I set my book on the nightstand. "And where exactly would I go during this trial separation?" "You could stay with your sister, or get a place downtown, closer to your office. I'd help with the rent, of course." "Of course. How generous." "And you'd stay here?" "Well, someone needs to maintain the house, the mortgage, the HOA fees. The house we'd bought together. The house where I'd planted the garden and chosen every piece of furniture. The house I'd turned into a home, while he turned into a stranger." "I need to think about it," I said. Relief flooded his face. "Of course. Take all the time you need." But I was already thinking, 3 moves ahead, like always. The next morning, Richard left early for a breakfast meeting. I waited until his car disappeared around the corner, then made 3 phone calls. First, to Tom Rivera, my colleague who specialized in family law. "Melissa, everything okay? I need a divorce attorney, the best one you know." Silence. Then, "Jesus, I'm sorry. What happened?" "The usual. Can you recommend someone?" "Sarah Chen. She's a shark. I'll text you her number." Second call, to Jenna Hale, our junior associate. "Jenna, I need you to pull together a comprehensive asset report. Real estate, investments, business holdings, everything under both my name and Richard's." "Is this for a client?" "It's for me." Third call, to my bank. "I'd like to open a separate checking account." By 10 a.m., I had a divorce attorney, a complete financial picture, and a secure place to move money that was rightfully mine. Richard thought he was playing chess. He didn't realize I'd been playing for years. That afternoon, Claire Jensen cornered me at the mailbox. "Melissa, I haven't seen you at book club lately." Claire was 42, blonde, and had never worked a day in her life. Her husband sold insurance, and she treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. "I've been busy with work." "Oh, of course. Richard mentioned you might be traveling more for business." Had he now? Did he? "At the HOA meeting last week, he said you were considering some big career changes." The HOA meeting I hadn't been invited to. The career changes I'd never discussed. "Richard says a lot of things." Claire's smile sharpened. "Well, change can be good. Speaking of which, did you know the Hendersons are getting divorced? Apparently he was having an affair with his secretary." So cliché. "How awful for her." "Oh, she's doing fine. Got the house, half his business, and a very generous alimony settlement. Her attorney was brilliant." Claire wasn't just gossiping. She was sending a message. The neighborhood telegraph was already buzzing with speculation about the Vaughn marriage. "I should go," I said. "Lots to do." "Of course, dear. Let me know if you need anything. Us girls have to stick together." That evening, Richard came home with flowers, grocery store roses, still in the plastic wrapper. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Do I need an occasion to buy my wife flowers?" "You haven't bought me flowers in 3 years." He laughed uncomfortably. "That's not true." "Valentine's Day 2019, pink roses from the florist on 5th Street. Before that, our anniversary in 2018. White lilies." "You remember that?" "I remember everything, Richard." Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. "I was thinking we could go out this weekend. That new place on Elm Street. The one with the rooftop bar? No, the Italian place. Mama Rosa's. Liar. The rooftop bar was Meridian, where he'd taken her last night, where he'd probably taken her multiple times. That sounds nice, I said, but we both knew we wouldn't make it to the weekend. That night, I lay in bed listening to Richard's breathing, planning my next move. He thought he was managing me, controlling the narrative. Poor delusional Melissa, so focused on work she didn't notice her marriage falling apart. He had no idea what was coming. Thursday morning brought rain and revelation. I was reviewing contracts at the kitchen table when Richard appeared in the doorway, fully dressed for work, but making no move to leave. "We need to talk," he said. I looked up from my laptop. He was nervous, shifting weight from foot to foot, running his hand through his hair. Classic Richard tells. "About what?" "About your attitude lately." "My attitude? I'm not sure what you mean." "You've been cold, distant. Yesterday with the flowers, you acted like I'd done something wrong." I closed my laptop and gave him my full attention. "Have you done something wrong?" The question hung in the air between us. Richard's face went through several expressions. Surprise, calculation, then something that looked almost like relief. "That's exactly what I'm talking about, the accusations, the suspicion." I asked a simple question. "No, you're implying something, and I'm tired of walking on eggshells in my own house." My own house. Interesting choice of words. "So what do you want to do about it?" Richard straightened, finding his confidence. This was the moment he'd been building toward. "I want you to apologize." "For what?" "For treating me like the enemy. For making assumptions. For turning our home into a battlefield." I stared at him. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. "And if I don't apologize?" "Then you can sleep in the guest room until you do." There it was. The ultimatum. The power play, designed to put me in my place, make me beg for forgiveness, restore the natural order where Richard called the shots. I stood up slowly, gathering my laptop and files. "All right," I said. Richard blinked. "All right, what?" "All right, I'll sleep in the guest room." This wasn't the response he'd expected. He'd wanted tears, pleading, maybe a dramatic scene where I threw myself at his mercy. Instead, I was already walking toward the stairs. "Melissa, wait. That's not... I don't want you to just give up." I paused at the bottom of the staircase. "I'm not giving up, Richard. I'm following your rules." "My rules?" "You said apologize or sleep in the guest room. I chose the guest room." I left him standing in the kitchen and went upstairs to pack. The guest room was at the far end of the hall, decorated in neutral beiges and greys. Impersonal. Perfect for what came next. I moved my clothes first, not everything, just enough to make it look like a temporary arrangement. Then I set up my laptop on the small desk by the window. Finally, I called Sarah Chen. "Mrs. Vaughn, Tom Rivera said you might be calling. I need to file for divorce, today." "That's very fast. Are you sure you don't want to?" "I'm sure. My husband just ordered me to sleep in the guest room until I apologize for suspecting him of having an affair." "Which he is." Silence. Then a low whistle. "Do you have proof?" "Emails, calendar entries, credit card receipts, photographs. I'm forwarding everything now." "Jesus, he kept records." "Men like my husband always think they're smarter than they are." "Okay, I can have papers drawn up by end of business today. But Mrs. Vaughn, once we file, there's no taking it back. Your husband will be served, probably at work. It's going to get ugly fast." "It's already ugly. I'm just making it official." After hanging up, I opened my laptop and got to work. First, I transferred $50,000 from our joint savings to my new personal account, well, within my legal rights as a joint account holder. Then, I photographed every piece of jewelry Richard had given me over the years, along with their appraisals. Finally, I made copies of all our important documents, mortgage papers, insurance policies, investment statements. By noon, I had everything I needed. Richard came home early, around 4. I heard his car in the driveway, then his footsteps on the stairs. He knocked on the guest room door. "Melissa, can we talk?" "Come in." He opened the door and stopped short. I'd transformed the space into a war room. Documents spread across the bed, laptop open, legal pads covered in notes. "What is all this?" "Research." "For what?" I looked up at him. Really looked. When had he gotten so small? When had that confident swagger turned into nervous fidgeting? "You know, Richard, you're right about one thing. I have been suspicious lately." "Want to know why?" He didn't answer. "Because last Tuesday, your calendar alert popped up on my phone. Site visit, Brooks, 6:30. Remember that?" The color drained from his face. So, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. To your late nights, your early showers, your mysterious breakfast meetings. To the credit card charges at restaurants I've never been to. To the hotel receipts in your jacket pocket. "Melissa, I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can. You're very creative. Like that story about working late on the Morrison account while you were actually at Meridian Hotel with Lena Brooks." Richard sat down heavily in the chair by the window. For a moment, he looked older than his 42 years. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." "What do you want?" Such a simple question. What did I want? "I want you to understand something, Richard. You thought you were managing me, controlling the situation. You thought if you pushed me into the guest room, I'd break down and beg for forgiveness. You thought I'd make this easy for you." I stood up and walked to the window. Our perfect lawn stretched out below, sprinklers painting their perfect arcs. But here's what you didn't consider. I'm a lawyer. I've spent 15 years watching people lie, cheat, and steal. I've seen every trick, every manipulation, every pathetic attempt to rewrite history. I turned back to face him. "You wanted me in the guest room? Fine. But I'm not your victim, Richard. I'm your opponent now, and you just gave me home field advantage." "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, I handed him a manila envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." With shaking hands, he pulled out the divorce papers. His face went white as he read the first page. "You can't be serious." "Absolutely serious." "Melissa, please. We can work this out. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want is half of everything we built together. The house, the investments, your pension, your stock options. What I want is alimony based on your actual income, not the reduced salary you're probably already planning to claim." Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "And Richard, I want you to know that I'm very, very good at my job." That evening, I ordered Chinese food and ate it in the guest room while reviewing Sarah Chen's strategy notes. Richard stayed downstairs, probably calling Lena, probably panicking. Around 10 p.m., he knocked again. "Melissa, I'm going to bed." "Good night, Richard. This doesn't have to be a war." I looked up from my legal pad. "You're right. It doesn't have to be a war." Hope flickered in his eyes. "It's going to be an execution." The next morning, I woke up before the sprinklers, 6 a.m. sharp. I showered, dressed in my best suit, and made coffee. When Richard stumbled into the kitchen an hour later, I was already gone. I left a note on the counter. "Gone to work. Don't wait up." By the time he read it, I was already at Sarah Chen's office, signing papers that would change everything. "The process server will find him at work around noon," Sarah said. "Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready for years. I just didn't know it yet." My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Where are you? We need to talk." I showed Sarah the message. "He still thinks he can control the narrative," she said. "He's about to learn otherwise." At exactly 12:15 p.m., my phone exploded, call after call from Richard, each one going to voicemail. Then the text started. "What the hell is this? You can't just file for divorce without talking to me. This is insane. Call me back. Melissa, please, don't do this." I turned my phone face down and got back to work. At 5 p.m., I drove home to collect more of my things. Richard's car was already in the driveway. I could see him pacing in the living room through the front window. The front door opened before I could reach for my keys. "Melissa, thank God. We need to fix this." "There's nothing to fix." "Yes, there is. Look, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But we can get past this." I pushed past him into the house. "Where's Lena?" "What?" "Lena, your girlfriend. Where is she?" "She's not my girlfriend. It wasn't serious." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned to face him. "Richard, do you remember what you told me yesterday morning? About my attitude?" He nodded miserably. "You said I was treating you like the enemy, making assumptions, turning our home into a battlefield." "I was wrong. I was projecting because I felt guilty." "No, you were right. I was treating you like the enemy. Because you are the enemy. You've been lying to me for months, stealing from our marriage, planning your exit strategy with another woman." "It wasn't like that. The only thing you were wrong about was thinking I didn't know." I started up the stairs. "Melissa, please, don't leave. We can fix this." "I'm not leaving, Richard. You are." "What do you mean?" I paused halfway up the staircase. "Read the papers. Really read them. I'm filing for the house, temporary spousal support, and exclusive occupancy during proceedings. You have 72 hours to find somewhere else to live. You can't kick me out of my own house. Our house. And yes, I can. Sarah Chen is very good at her job too." That night, I heard Richard on the phone in his study, voice raised, probably talking to a lawyer of his own. Good. Let him scramble. Let him panic. Let him finally understand that actions have consequences. I slept better than I had in months. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was in the kitchen, enjoying my first peaceful cup of coffee in weeks, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Aunt Beverly. Richard's aunt was 68, silver-haired, and had never liked me. She tolerated me for Richard's sake, but her disapproval radiated from every perfectly composed pore. She was also the unofficial social coordinator for Richard's entire extended family, the keeper of reputations and arbiter of acceptable behavior. "Beverly," I said, opening the door, "this is a surprise." "May I come in, dear?" Her tone was arctic. I stepped aside and let her enter. Beverly surveyed the living room like a general inspecting troops. Her gaze lingered on the family photos still displayed on the mantel, the wedding picture on the side table. "Richard called me," she said without preamble. I assumed he might. "He's very upset." "I imagine he is." Beverly turned to face me fully. She was a small woman, barely 5'3", but she had presence. The kind of woman who could silence a room with a look. "Melissa, I'm going to speak plainly. This divorce nonsense needs to stop." "It's not nonsense, Beverly. It's necessary." "Marriage is work, dear. It requires forgiveness, compromise, sacrifice. You can't just throw it away the moment things get difficult." I gestured toward the couch. "Would you like to sit down?" "I prefer to stand." "Suit yourself. Can I get you coffee? Water?" "I don't want refreshments. I want you to listen." Beverly moved to the window overlooking our front yard. The morning sun caught the silver in her hair, making her look almost ethereal. Almost. "Do you see this neighborhood, Melissa? These beautiful homes, these well-maintained lawns, these families who've built something lasting?" "I see it every day. Do you know what holds it all together? What makes it work?" I had a feeling she was going to tell me. Stability, commitment. People who understand that marriage isn't about personal happiness, it's about building something bigger than yourself. And if one person decides to build something with someone else, Beverly's reflection in the window smiled coldly, then the other person finds a way to rebuild what was broken. Even if they don't want to, especially if they don't want to, that's what commitment means. I joined her at the window. Across the street, Claire Jensen was power walking with another neighbor, their heads bent together in animated conversation. The neighborhood telegraph was working overtime. "Beverly, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Did you know about Lena?" The question hung in the air. Beverly's reflection went very still. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do. You've mentioned her several times over the past year. What a lovely girl she is. How talented. How perfect for someone like Richard." "She is talented. Richard's company is lucky to have her." "Is that all they have?" Beverly turned away from the window to face me directly. "Melissa, you're a smart woman. Smart enough to know that men sometimes stray. It doesn't mean anything. It's biological, really. A temporary madness that passes if you handle it correctly." "And how should I handle it correctly?" "By being the bigger person. By focusing on what matters. Your marriage, your home, your future. Not by throwing a tantrum and running to lawyers." The casual dismissal of my pain, the reduction of Richard's betrayal to a temporary madness, it was breathtaking in its arrogance. "What if I don't want to be the bigger person?" "Then you're a fool." Beverly moved toward the front door, then paused. "Richard made a mistake, but he's a good man from a good family. He can provide for you, give you the life you've become accustomed to. Do you really want to throw that away for pride?" "It's not about pride, Beverly." "Then what is it about?" I thought about that question for a long moment. "It's about truth. Richard lied to me for months. He planned his exit strategy while pretending to love me. He tried to manipulate me into apologizing for discovering his betrayal. That's not a mistake. It's a character revelation." "Character?" Beverly laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to talk about character? Let's talk about the character it takes to honor your commitments even when it's difficult. The character it takes to forgive. The character it takes to put your family's reputation above your wounded feelings." "Family's reputation? Do you think this only affects you? Richard has cousins, nieces, nephews. His brother is running for city council next year. His sister just got engaged. This scandal will touch all of them." And there it was, the real reason for Beverly's visit. Not concern for my marriage, but concern for the family image. "I'm sorry if my divorce inconveniences everyone." "You should be, and you should think very carefully about whether your hurt feelings are worth destroying the lives of innocent people." After Beverly left, I sat in my living room for a long time thinking. She wasn't wrong about the ripple effects. Richard's family was prominent in local business and social circles. A messy divorce would generate gossip, speculation, judgment, but that wasn't my problem anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire Jensen. "Saw Beverly's car in your driveway. Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Everything's fine, just family business. If you need to talk, I'm here. Us girls have to stick together." The emoji made me want to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I called Sarah Chen. "How was your weekend?" she asked. "Educational. Richard's aunt paid me a visit, tried to convince me to drop the divorce for the good of the family reputation." "Ah, the pressure campaign begins. How do you feel about that? Like I made the right decision?" "Good, because it's about to get worse. I got a call from Richard's attorney yesterday. He wants to meet." "What kind of meet?" "The kind where they try to lowball you into a quick settlement. They're hoping you'll panic and take whatever they offer." "When?" "Tuesday afternoon. Are you ready for this?" I looked around my living room, our living room, at the life Richard and I had built together. The furniture we'd chosen, the art we'd collected, the memories embedded in every corner. "I'm ready." That afternoon, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. I needed air, space, time to think. But mostly, I wanted to see how the news was spreading. I didn't have to wait long. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down was in her front yard, pruning roses that didn't need pruning. She looked up as I approached. "Melissa, how are you holding up, dear?" "I'm fine, thank you." Such a difficult time, but sometimes these things work out for the best. I paused at her gate. What things? Oh, changes, new beginnings. She snipped a perfectly healthy rosebud. My sister went through something similar a few years ago. Turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to her. I'll keep that in mind. 2 blocks later, I encountered the Hendersons, the couple Claire had mentioned, the ones going through their own divorce. Janet Henderson was loading boxes into her SUV, while her soon-to-be ex-husband watched from the front porch. She saw me and waved. "Melissa, I heard the news. How are you doing?" "One day at a time." "That's all you can do. Listen, if you need anything, a place to stay, someone to talk to, a recommendation for a good attorney, just call." "Thank you, that's very kind." "We have to look out for each other. Men certainly don't." Her husband called something from the porch. Janet ignored him completely. "The first few weeks are the hardest," she continued. "All the emotions, the logistics, the people who think they know what's best for you. But it gets easier." "Does it?" "Oh, yes. Once you realize you're not losing something, you're gaining your freedom." That evening, Richard came home to pack more of his belongings. He'd been staying at a hotel since Thursday, coming by the house only when necessary. We'd developed an unspoken system. He texted before arriving. I made myself scarce or stayed in the guest room. But tonight was different. Tonight, he wanted to talk. "Melissa?" His voice carried up the stairs. "Can you come down here?" I found him in the living room, surrounded by boxes. He looked tired, defeated. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. "Beverly came to see me," he said. "She came to see me too." "What did she say?" "That I should forgive you for the good of the family reputation." Richard winced. "That's not why I want you to forgive me." "Why do you want me to forgive you?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "Because I love you. Because I made a terrible mistake. Because I want to fix this." "Do you love me, Richard? Or do you love the idea of me? The life we built, the image we projected, the convenience of a wife who handled everything while you played around? That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you asked about my work, my dreams, my feelings about anything that didn't directly impact you?" He couldn't answer. "You love the version of me that made your life easier. The wife who kept your house, managed your social calendar, smiled at your colleagues' parties. You don't love me. You love what I did for you. That's not true. Then tell me something about me that has nothing to do with you." Silence. "Tell me about my goals, my fears, my hopes for the future. Tell me about the book I'm reading, the case I'm working on, the conversation I had with my sister last week." More silence. "You can't, can you? Because you never asked. In 15 years of marriage, you never once asked what I wanted out of life beyond being your wife." Richard's face crumpled. "I'm sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't undo months of lies. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust." "Then what does?" I looked around the room one more time, at the life we'd built, the dreams we'd shared, the future we'd planned. "Nothing, Richard. Some things can't be fixed." After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the back patio, looking out at the garden I'd planted 3 years ago. The roses were blooming, the herbs were thriving, the small fountain Richard had installed for our anniversary bubbled peacefully in the corner. I'd built something beautiful here, something that was mine, and I wasn't giving it up without a fight. Tuesday arrived with unseasonable heat and humidity that made everyone irritable. Perfect weather for a legal showdown. Sarah Chen's office was downtown in a glass tower that reflected the city's ambitions back at itself. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in my best navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. Image matters in these situations. You want to look successful, confident, unshakable. You want the other side to understand they're not dealing with a victim. Sarah met me in the lobby, She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a handshake that could crack walnuts. "Ready for this?" she asked as we rode the elevator to the 20th floor. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Remember what we discussed. Let me do the talking. Don't react to anything they say, no matter how provocative. They're going to try to get under your skin. Understood? And Melissa, you hold all the cards here. Don't let them convince you otherwise." The conference room was all glass and chrome, with a view of the city that was probably meant to intimidate. Richard was already there with his attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated old money confidence. Richard looked awful. His face was pale, his eyes were bloodshot, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. Good. "Mrs. Vaughn," the silver-haired man stood as we entered. "I'm David Morrison, Mr. Vaughn's counsel. Thank you for coming." I shook his hand without smiling. "Mr. Morrison." We took our seats across from each other. Sarah opened her briefcase and arranged documents with military precision. Morrison did the same, but with more flourish. "Well," Morrison began, "I think we can all agree that this is an unfortunate situation, but I believe we can resolve it quickly and amicably, without the need for lengthy court proceedings." "I'm listening," Sarah said. Morrison slid a document across the table. "We're prepared to offer Mrs. Vaughn a very generous settlement, $200,000, plus her personal belongings and vehicle." I felt my jaw clench, but kept my expression neutral. 200,000. After 15 years of marriage, after building a life together worth over $2 million, they were offering me less than 10%. Sarah barely glanced at the document. "This is insulting." "I think you'll find it's quite reasonable, given the circumstances." "What circumstances would those be?" Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Well, Mrs. Vaughn has her own career, her own income. She's perfectly capable of supporting herself. And frankly, the marriage has been troubled for some time. Both parties bear responsibility for its breakdown." "Both parties?" Sarah's voice was dangerously quiet. "Marriage is complicated, Ms. Chen. There are always two sides to every story." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "What's my side of the story, Mr. Morrison?" He looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry." "You said there are two sides. Richard's side is that he's been having an affair for months. What's my side?" "Mrs. Vaughn, perhaps we should let the attorneys—" "No, I'm curious. What did I do that contributed to the breakdown of my marriage? Did I work too much? Not pay enough attention to my husband? Fail to be sufficiently grateful for his generosity?" Morrison glanced at Richard, who was staring at the table. "Mrs. Vaughn, I'm not here to assign blame. But you just did. You said both parties bear responsibility. I'd like to know what I'm responsible for." Silence. "Because from where I'm sitting, my only mistake was trusting my husband. My only failure was not paying attention to the credit card statements and calendar alerts that would have shown me his affair months earlier." "Melissa," Richard spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. "Please, this doesn't have to be adversarial." I turned to look at him. Really look. The man I'd married 20 years ago had been confident, ambitious, full of dreams. This person looked small, defeated, pathetic. "You're right, Richard. It doesn't have to be adversarial. But it is, because you made it adversarial when you decided to betray our marriage. It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did happen, for months, while you were lying to me, planning your future with someone else, trying to manipulate me into apologizing for suspecting the truth." Morrison cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should focus on the practical matters at hand." Sarah leaned forward. "Absolutely. Let's talk practical matters. Your client has been married for 15 years. During that time, he's accumulated significant assets, a house worth $800,000, investment accounts worth over $400,000, a pension worth another $300,000, plus stock options and other benefits. Mr. Vaughn worked very hard for those assets. While married to my client, who also worked very hard, who also contributed to the household, supported his career, and sacrificed her own opportunities for the good of the marriage. Mrs. Vaughn has her own successful career, which she built while managing a household, supporting her husband's ambitions, and fulfilling all the obligations of a corporate wife. Charity events, client dinners, social functions that directly benefited Mr. Vaughn's career. I watched Morrison's confidence begin to waver. Furthermore, Sarah continued, your client has been systematically deceiving my client for months, using marital assets to conduct an extramarital affair, hotel rooms, restaurant meals, gifts, all paid for with money that belonged to both spouses. That's a very small amount in the grand scheme. It's theft, and it demonstrates a pattern of deception that calls into question every financial decision your client has made recently. Sarah pulled out another document. Which brings us to this, the transfer of $50,000 from your client's business account to a personal account in his name only. Made last month without my client's knowledge. Richard's face went white. That was for business purposes. What business purposes require hiding money from your spouse? Morrison was scrambling now. Ms. Chen, these are minor issues that can be resolved. They're not minor to my client, and they won't be minor to a judge. Sarah leaned back in her chair, suddenly relaxed. Here's what's going to happen, gentlemen. My client is entitled to half of all marital assets. That's approximately $1 million, plus spousal support, plus attorney's fees. She's also entitled to the house, since your client chose to abandon it. Abandon it? He's staying in a hotel temporarily. At his choice, after ordering my client to sleep in the guest room, after serving her with an ultimatum designed to force her submission. I watched Richard shrink further into his chair. So here's our counteroffer, Sarah continued. Mrs. Vaughn gets the house, half of all investment and retirement accounts, spousal support of $5,000 per month for 5 years, and all attorney's fees. Morrison was speechless. Or we can go to court, where a judge will hear about Mr. Vaughn's affair, his financial deception, his attempts to manipulate and control my client, and his family's pressure campaign to force her into an unfavorable settlement. Pressure campaign? Didn't you know? Mr. Vaughn's aunt visited my client over the weekend, tried to convince her to drop the divorce for the good of the family reputation. I'm sure a judge would find that very interesting. The room was silent except for the hum of air conditioning. Finally, Morrison spoke. We'll need time to consider your proposal. Of course, you have 48 hours. As we gathered our papers, Richard finally looked at me. Melissa, I never wanted it to be like this. I paused at the door. No, Richard, you wanted it to be easy. You wanted me to disappear quietly so you could start your new life without consequences. But that's not how this works. What happened to us? The question was so plaintive, so genuinely confused, that for a moment I almost felt sorry for him again. You happened to us, Richard. You made choices that ended our marriage. Now you get to live with those choices. Outside the building, Sarah and I walked to a nearby coffee shop to debrief. How do you think it went? I asked. Better than I expected. They came in thinking they could steamroll you with a lowball offer and some victim blaming. Instead, they got a masterclass in why adultery has consequences. Will they accept the settlement? They'd be fools not to. Going to court would cost them more in legal fees than the difference in settlement amounts. Plus, everything would become public record. I sipped my coffee and watched the city move around us. People hurrying to meetings, living their lives, dealing with their own problems. Sarah, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think I'm being too harsh? She looked at me over her coffee cup. Do you? Sometimes, when I see how broken he looks, how scared, part of me wants to make this easier for him. That's normal. You loved him for 15 years. Those feelings don't just disappear. But he didn't consider your feelings when he was betraying your marriage. He didn't worry about making things easy for you when he was lying to your face every day. She was right, of course. Melissa, let me ask you something. If you could go back to the way things were before you knew about the affair, would you? I thought about that question for a long time. No, I said finally. I wouldn't, because now I know who he really is. And I know who I really am. Who are you? Someone who doesn't settle for less than she deserves. That evening, I sat in my garden with a glass of wine, watching the sun set behind the oak trees. My phone had been buzzing all day with messages from well-meaning friends and family, all offering advice I didn't want. But as the sky turned purple and the first stars appeared, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. For the first time in years, I knew exactly where I stood. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I was worth, and I wasn't backing down. The call came at 7:30 Thursday morning. I was in the kitchen, making coffee and reading case files, when my phone rang. Sarah Chen's name appeared on the screen. They accepted, she said without preamble. I set down my coffee cup carefully. All of it. Every term. House, investments, spousal support, attorney's fees. Morrison called an hour ago. They want to finalize everything as quickly as possible. Why the sudden rush? Richard's brother's city council campaign, I'd guess. Or maybe they're worried you'll change your mind and ask for more. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the neighborhood. The sprinklers were running their morning cycle, painting perfect arcs across perfect lawns. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 6 months ago, but everything had changed. How long until it's final? 6 weeks, maybe 8. We'll need to work out the logistics, transferring accounts, refinancing the house in your name, that sort of thing. But the hard part is over. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, trying to process what I was feeling. Relief, certainly. Satisfaction, but also something unexpected. Sadness. Not for Richard exactly. Not for our marriage. But for the woman I'd been 6 months ago. The woman who'd believed in happily ever after, who'd trusted completely, who'd built her entire identity around being someone's wife. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, smarter, more self-aware. Someone who would never again mistake manipulation for love or control for care. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire Jensen. Heard the good news. Coffee later to celebrate. The neighborhood telegraph was working overtime, as usual. I wondered how Claire had found out so quickly, then decided I didn't care. I texted back, rain check, busy day. The response came immediately. Of course. Let me know if you need anything. So proud of you. The emoji made me smile despite myself. Around noon, I drove downtown to Sarah's office to sign papers. The legal documents that would officially end my marriage were surprisingly thin. 15 years reduced to a stack of forms and signatures. How do you feel? Sarah asked as I signed the last page, like I'm about to jump out of an airplane. Scared? Terrified, but also free. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping for myself. Not for the house, not for Richard, not for some social obligation. Just for me. I bought a dress I loved but would never have worn to one of Richard's business functions. Too bright, too bold, too much personality. I bought books I wanted to read, wine I wanted to drink, flowers I wanted to enjoy. For the first time in decades, I was shopping for a life that was entirely my own. That evening, as I was arranging my new flowers in a vase, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Richard standing on the front porch, looking nervous. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Hi, he said. Hi. I heard about the settlement. I assumed you would, since you agreed to it. He shifted uncomfortably. Can we talk? About what? About this. About us. About what happens next. I leaned against the doorframe. There is no us, Richard. There's you, and there's me, and there's a legal agreement that defines our future relationship. It doesn't have to be like that. Yes, it does. He looked past me into the house. Our house. My house now. I made a mistake, Melissa. A huge, terrible mistake. But it doesn't have to define the rest of our lives. You're right, It doesn't have to define your life, but it already has defined mine. What do you mean? I thought about how to explain it, the fundamental shift that had occurred, not just in our relationship, but in my understanding of myself. For 15 years, I defined myself through you. I was Richard's wife, Richard's partner, Richard's support system. I made decisions based on what was good for us, what was good for you, what was good for our marriage. That's what marriage is. No, that's what I thought marriage was. But marriage is supposed to be a partnership between equals. What we had was me supporting your life while neglecting my own. Richard's face crumpled. I never asked you to do that. You didn't have to ask. I volunteered. I was so grateful to be chosen, so happy to be loved, that I lost myself completely. And now I'm finding myself again. And I like who I'm becoming. We stood in silence for a moment. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower started up. Normal suburban sounds for a normal suburban evening. I miss you, Richard said quietly. You miss the idea of me. You miss having someone who managed your life, who made everything easy, who never challenged you or demanded more than you were willing to give. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you asked what I wanted out of life? When was the last time you considered my dreams, my goals, my happiness as separate from your own? He couldn't answer. You fell in love with Lena because she was exciting, new, different. She represented possibility, adventure, passion. All the things I stopped being when I became your wife. Melissa. But here's what you didn't consider, Richard. I stopped being those things because I thought that's what you wanted. I thought you wanted stability, predictability, someone who would always be there no matter what. I stepped back from the door. Turns out we were both wrong about what we wanted. So that's it. 15 years and we just walk away. You walked away months ago. I'm just making it official. After Richard left, I poured myself a glass of the wine I'd bought that afternoon and sat in my garden. The evening air was soft and warm, carrying the scent of roses and jasmine. My phone rang. My sister's name appeared on the screen. Hey, Kate. Hey yourself, how are you holding up? Better than expected. I heard about the settlement. Congratulations. Thanks. So what's next? I looked around my garden, at the house that was now truly mine, at the life I was about to begin building. I don't know, I said, and for the first time in years, that doesn't scare me. Good for you. Kate, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? Do you? Most of the time, but sometimes I wonder if I'm being too unforgiving, if I should have tried harder to save the marriage. Kate was quiet for a moment. Mel, do you remember when we were kids and you had that goldfish? Mr. Bubbles? Right, and you loved that fish so much even when the water got cloudy and gross. You kept trying to clean the tank, change the water, make it better, but the fish was already sick. I remember. And Mum finally had to explain that sometimes, no matter how much you love something, you can't save it. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let it go. I felt tears prick my eyes. Your marriage was already sick, Mel. Richard's affair was just the symptom. The real disease was the imbalance. The way you lost yourself trying to be what you thought he wanted. I know. You can't save a marriage by yourself, and you can't build a life on someone else's terms. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, thinking about goldfish and marriages, and the difference between love and self-sacrifice. Somewhere in the distance, the sprinklers kicked on for their evening cycle. The sound was soothing, rhythmic, like a heartbeat, my rhythm, my life. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged. 3 months later, I was sitting in my newly redecorated living room when the doorbell rang. I'd replaced Richard's heavy leather furniture with pieces that actually reflected my taste, lighter woods, softer fabrics, colors that made me happy instead of impressing visitors. Through the window, I could see a delivery truck in the driveway. Melissa Vaughn? The driver asked when I opened the door. That's me. Sign here, please. The package was small, wrapped in brown paper with no return address. Inside, I found a jewelry box containing the diamond earrings Richard had bought for Lena, the ones I'd seen on the credit card statement months ago. There was a note. "I thought you should have these. R." I held the earrings up to the light. They were beautiful, expensive, exactly the kind of thing Richard thought women wanted. The kind of thing I would have treasured 6 months ago, when I still believed that his gifts meant he loved me. Now they just looked like guilt, wrapped in platinum and diamonds. I put them back in the box and set it on the kitchen counter. I'd donate them to charity later, let someone else benefit from Richard's attempt at absolution. My phone rang. Sarah Chen's name appeared on the screen. "The final decree came through," she said. "It's official. You're divorced." "How do I feel about that?" "You tell me." I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at my garden. The roses were blooming again, fuller and more vibrant than they'd been in years. I'd spent the summer learning to care for them properly, reading gardening books, talking to experts at the nursery. Turns out I had a green thumb. I'd just never had the time to discover it before. "I feel relieved," I said finally. "Good. You should. You've been through hell and come out stronger." "Have I? Are you kidding? 6 months ago, you were sleeping in your guest room because your husband ordered you to. Today you own that house free and clear, you've got financial security, and you're about to make partner at your firm." The partnership had been announced the week before. Tom Rivera had nominated me, citing my exceptional performance under pressure during the past year. Apparently, handling a high-conflict divorce while maintaining a full caseload had impressed the senior partners. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think Richard learned anything from this?" "Does it matter?" "I don't know. Maybe." "Melissa, you can't control what Richard learned or didn't learn. You can only control what you learned." "And what did I learn?" "That you're stronger than you thought, that you deserve better than you were accepting, that you don't need someone else to complete you." After we hung up, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my garden. The late afternoon sun was warm on my face, and I could hear children playing in the neighborhood, the sound of life continuing, growing, changing. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire Jensen. "Wine night at my place tonight, celebrating your freedom." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Thanks, but I have plans." It wasn't true, but it felt true. I had plans with myself. Plans to read a book I'd been meaning to get to try a new recipe, to sit in my garden and enjoy the peace I'd fought so hard to achieve. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago. She'd been so afraid of being alone, so desperate to be loved, that she'd lost herself completely in someone else's life. I wasn't afraid anymore. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was having coffee on the back patio when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the house, I could see a familiar figure walking toward the front door, Lena Brooks. I took my time answering the bell. When I opened the door, she was standing there in a perfectly tailored suit, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Her smile was bright and fake. "Melissa, I hope you don't mind me stopping by." "Actually, I do." Her smile faltered slightly. "I was hoping we could talk." "About what?" "About Richard, about what happened, about moving forward." I leaned against the doorframe, not inviting her in. "What about Richard?" "Well, he's been having a really hard time with the divorce. He's depressed, struggling at work. I think he feels terrible about how things ended. And I thought maybe you could reach out to him, let him know you don't hate him, help him find some closure." The audacity was breathtaking. The woman who'd helped destroy my marriage was now asking me to comfort my ex-husband so he could feel better about betraying me. "Lena, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to help Richard feel better about cheating on me with you?" "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." "Melissa, I know you're angry. I'm not angry, I'm done. There's a difference. Lena's composure cracked slightly. Look, what happened between Richard and me? It wasn't planned. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Lena. People make choices. You chose to pursue a married man. Richard chose to betray his marriage. I chose to end it rather than pretend it never happened. But don't you think... No, I don't think Richard deserves my comfort, or my forgiveness, or my help moving on. He made his choices, and now he gets to live with the consequences. I stepped back and started to close the door. Melissa, wait, I paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. But someone did get hurt. I got hurt. And you knew that would happen when you made your choices. I know, but, Lena, I need you to understand something. I don't hate you. I don't hate Richard. But I also don't forgive you. Forgiveness would require me to care about your guilt, your regret, your need for absolution. And I don't. I closed the door firmly and went back to my coffee. Later that afternoon, I was working in my garden when my phone rang. Richard's number appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. The message was brief. Melissa, I know Lena came to see you today. I didn't ask her to do that. I wanted you to know that I understand why you can't forgive me, and I wanted to say thank you. Thank you, I called him back. Thank you for what? I asked when he answered. For teaching me what I lost. For showing me what real strength looks like. For not letting me get away with it. Richard, I know you don't want to hear this, but I need to say it. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away because I was selfish and stupid and thought I deserved more than I had. You did deserve more. We both did. We deserved honesty, respect, a real partnership. What we had wasn't that. I know. I see that now. Good. Learn from it. Will you ever be able to forgive me? I looked out at my garden, at the life I'd built from the ashes of our marriage. I don't know, Richard, but I don't need to forgive you to be happy. And that's what matters now. After hanging up, I sat in my garden until the stars came out. The night was warm and still, filled with the sound of crickets and the distant hum of air conditioners. I thought about forgiveness, about closure, about the difference between healing and forgetting. I thought about the woman I'd been, and the woman I was becoming. Somewhere in the distance, sprinklers kicked on, painting their familiar arcs across perfect lawns. The sound was soothing, rhythmic, like a lullaby. I'd built something here, something that was entirely mine, something that no one could take away or diminish or destroy. I'd built a life, and for the first time in years, it was exactly the life I wanted. 6 months later, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop downtown, reviewing contracts for a major acquisition, when someone approached my table. Excuse me, are you Melissa Vaughn? I looked up to see a woman about my age, professionally dressed with kind eyes and a nervous smile. Yes? I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm going through a divorce, and my attorney mentioned your case. She said you might be willing to talk to me about how you got through it. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. Please, sit down. Thank you. I hope you don't mind, but Sarah Chen said you were an inspiration. The way you handled everything, the way you stood up for yourself. What's your situation? Jennifer's story was depressingly familiar. A husband who'd grown distant, financial irregularities, suspicious behavior. The gradual realization that the life she thought she was living was a lie. The hardest part, she said, is that everyone keeps telling me I should try to save my marriage. That I should fight for it, go to counseling, give him another chance. What do you want to do? I want to run. I want to file papers and never look back. But then I think about our kids, our life together, what people will say. Jennifer, can I tell you something? She nodded. A year ago, I was sleeping in my guest room because my husband ordered me to apologize for suspecting his affair. I was so afraid of being alone, so desperate to save my marriage, that I was willing to accept blame for his betrayal. What changed? I realized that I wasn't trying to save my marriage. I was trying to save my image of my marriage. The real marriage, the one where my husband lied to me for months while planning his future with someone else, wasn't worth saving. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. You have to decide what you're fighting for, I continued. Are you fighting for a real partnership based on honesty and respect? Or are you fighting to maintain an illusion that's already been shattered? How do you know the difference? You know. We talked for another hour. I gave her Sarah Chen's number, shared some practical advice about protecting her assets, and listened while she worked through her fears and doubts. As she was leaving, she turned back. Can I ask you one more thing? Of course. Do you regret it? Getting divorced, I mean. I thought about that question, really thought about it. I regret that my marriage ended. I regret that Richard chose to betray our vows. I regret the pain we both went through. But I don't regret choosing myself. I don't regret demanding better. I don't regret walking away from a situation that was destroying me. Jennifer smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. Thank you for everything. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for a while longer, watching the city move around me. People hurrying to meetings, living their lives, making their choices. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom Rivera. Drinks tonight to celebrate the Morrison deal? I typed back, absolutely. Then I gathered my papers, finished my coffee, and stepped out into the afternoon sunshine. I had a life to live, a life that was entirely, completely, unapologetically mine. And it was beautiful.